Let's bring in now, live at the desk, our political editor, Andrew Clennell. Lots happening here in Canberra today. The focus, as Stash mentioned there, big speech by the PNG Prime Minister in terms of foreign policy, in terms of politics. It's all about IR today.
Well, it's the biggest overhaul of IR laws late last year and early this year since Julia Gillard and Kevin Rudd overturned work choices with the Fair Work Act and the Fair Work Commission back in about 2008-9. So it is a big deal. And so is this right to disconnect law. And it could involve fines of up to $18,000 for businesses if they breach stop orders. And look, to be fair to Tony Burke, the Workplace Relations Minister, he explained this on Sunday Agenda on the weekend. What he says here is exactly what this legislation has ended up doing.
Indeed, a place like WA where they have to deal with the eastern states, they're in a different time zone, for example. This seems quite difficult in a number of ways. How much might an allowance be if it's introduced, and would it be mandatory for certain sectors or all sectors? How would it work?
Oh, look, the sort of concept would be, one of the concepts being talked about, so none of this has landed yet, and the business groups are part of the consultation with this as well. One of the concepts that's being talked about is effectively there's no fines in the jurisdiction, but if it's got completely out of hand of a worker, being expected to do unpaid work, they'd be able to go to the Commission, get a stop order, and then if the stop order was breached, at that point the employer would have been completely on notice. If the stop order was breached, only then would there be a situation of fines. So that's the sort of concept that's being talked about. It's a pretty light touch, but it also establishes a principle that just says, it shouldn't be a controversial principle, which is in Australia, you're meant to be paid when you're working.
Okay, so Minister,
that's really all this is about.
Well, he said it was a light touch. I'm sure business would disagree. Let's have a look at all the changes now, and that comes after the IR changes last year. I mean, the right to disconnect. You've got casual conversion to permanent work. Business didn't want that either. Minimum conditions for gig economy. I mean, the ACTU and the unions are partying right now. Their IR minister's got them absolutely just about everything that they wanted. It is a major overhaul. Tony Burke's argument is these changes aren't that big. They won't ruin the economy. I think business would beg to differ. We have got very low unemployment, though, at the moment. But it'll be interesting to see how these wash out in the years ahead. And the reason it's such a big IR reform, Kieran, is because after work choices and how John Howard lost the 2007 election because of that, the coalition wasn't game to touch IR again in their entire 9 years in office. Now Tony Burke's taken it the other way. He's gone far further than the former Labor government. It is a really intriguing development. The other intriguing development is just how David Pocock's come all the way on it, as have the Greens. It really is a Labor, Greens, Pocock alliance and all this stuff. Someone who isn't into it is that other independent crossbencher who often stands up for the little people and the workers, I guess, Jackie Lambie. She's blowing up about it today.
This is something that the Greens have chucked in to get votes. I don't know how it is workable whatsoever. I just don't understand how this thing is going to function. I would have thought, after going through COVID, is that there is a lot more flexibility in the workforce with most businesses around there. We are going into really uncertain economic times this year, and I just worry about that extra red tape for businesses. I always thought that doing your industrial relations laws was supposed to lessen red tape, especially for businesses out there, and quite frankly, I just think these tranches have just added to it.
So, Kieran, it really is a big deal, isn't it? I guess Tony Burke gets to say he's an IR reformer, but it's not the sort of reform business would like to see.
Yeah, and we're going to be joined by Bram Black, the head of the BCA, in just a couple of minutes, Andrew. So we'll hear straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak. But when it comes to Jackie Lambie, she speaks a lot of sense. When you're looking at a period where business employers have been increasingly flexible about working from home, people work from home 2-3 days a week, and then to come in with this right to disconnect at the behest of the Greens seems a little counterintuitive. The other thing I'd pick up on that you said about the Liberals not having, I guess, the motivation, the impetus, the guts maybe to go IR over the last decade, I wonder whether this is the catalyst for Peter Dutton and his team to say enough's enough and run hard on this issue over the coming 6 to 12 months.
That's a really good point. I mean, he will be expected to go to the election rolling back some of this. So we talk about tax cuts being a key battleground of the next election. Looks like after these changes, IR will be as well.
Indeed. And Andrew, we'll talk to you soon.